Yeah, off and running. Hello, everybody. My name is Dale Stevens. I'm from Adelaide University, and I am part of the Oxford Forum for International Humanitarian Law Compliance. Today, I have Lieutenant Colonel Tennille Marsh with me from the Australian Defence Force. Welcome, Tennille.
Hi, Dale. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the kind invitation to join the Oxford Forum.
Thank you. Before we start, let me introduce Tennille. Tennille joined the Australian Defence Force in 2011 after stints in commercial litigation and Aboriginal legal aid. She has served on operations in Afghanistan and has served with Special Operations Command and 3rd Brigade. She completed the Australian Command and Staff College in 2020, receiving the Principal's Prize for Military Academic Excellence. Lieutenant Colonel Marsh is currently posted to Army Headquarters as the Chief of Army's Legal Officer. She has also taught on various military law centre courses. So we have a great officer with a great background. Tennille, can you please briefly describe how the ADF prepares and trains its legal officers in Loac?
Thanks, Dale. So I would say the training of legal officers in Loac is absolutely fundamental if we want a military force to be trained in Loac and comply with it. Legal officers are very much the subject matter experts and relied upon for command, so their training is critical. And our military law centre, which I've been fortunate to teach with at times, plays a critical role in how we train our lawyers. So they are responsible for delivering our legal officer education and training, which enables us to then give the high quality LOAC presentations to members of the entire ADF. So we do this through a tiered module system. So our first training module is called LTM1, and it's delivered by the Military Law Centre in-house in its Sydney facilities, or during the pandemic, as we've all experienced, online learning. And they cover 4 key subjects, which military operations law is one of them. The other is administrative law, discipline law, and what we call military legal practice. Once our junior lawyers have completed that course, they then move on to our Legal Module 2 course. That is currently provided by an academic provider, but we're actually changing that and bringing it back into the MLC to make it that really practical orientation as well. And we cover the same 4 areas of operations law, admin, discipline, and military legal practice. But what we have done recently is how we do our operations law course. It's currently being redesigned, and we're including the full spectrum of conflicts and operations that ADF lawyers may be involved with at present and also into the future as well. So that's actually going to be a slightly longer course. It's going to be a 2-week course, and then we'll have a 1-week consolidation course, which will be a really practical tested course, and that will for ADF lawyers who are identified for deployment. Once our lawyers have done that suite of courses, they then move on to our next level, our module 3, which is our advanced courses. This is developed by an academic provider, and we again do 3 basic requirements, compulsory subjects, if you will, in admin, discipline, and operations law. But then we can choose a number of electives by the academic provider, and you can choose to really specialise in some of international law subjects in that respect. And we come out with a Masters of International Law in that respect. And so that's, you know, our highest academic qualification for our legal officers. Now, we have been running that system for over a decade, and it became obvious that our legal education and the training that we put up along was not necessarily working at an optimum level for us. And we didn't necessarily provide our ADF legal officers for their roles and functions and responsibility on deployment. And as a consequence, we've developed that vocational training course, which is developed outside of that. And now we call that the Joint Operations Legal Training Course. And having done that course myself, it is the hardest course I've ever done in my legal career. It's really tough, but it's really practical and really sets our legal officers up well for deployment.
Thank you, Tennille. That sounds incredibly comprehensive for legal officers. Apart from the training that you've described for legal officers, do ADF legal officers have the capacity or the opportunity? You know what? I am lost. So we'll for the people at Oxford, you're going to need to just cut here and start again. My next question to you is about training overseas. So let's start again.
Yeah.
So thanks, Tennille. Apart from the training you've just described, do ADF legal officers also have the opportunity to train overseas and engage with their international counterparts?
Absolutely, they do. So the MLC is responsible for coordinating some of that, and we train a lot over and attend overseas courses, particularly with our Five Eyes partners. I myself have been to the UK Army Legal Service Operations course, and we've had people attend the Canadian course, the US course, and also the Malaysian Centre for Military International Humanitarian Law course. As well as that, we've had people attend the San Marino International Institute for Humanitarian Law course. And we've recently had an exchange visit program with the US Army as well. We also do some work on operational law handbooks. I've very fortunately this year had a great opportunity to be involved in the ABCANs. So for those of you not familiar with ABCANs, it's America, British, Canada and New Zealand. Canada and New Zealand. Sorry to my Canadian colleagues. And I've been involved in assisting rewriting some of those legal chapters and working with my other colleagues on similar issues that we all face.
So it sounds like very comprehensive internal training regime for ADF legal officers, and lots of opportunity for external engagement with allies and partners. But does the MLC also assist in the general training of Loac to ADF officers generally?
Absolutely, they do. So last year, the ADF actually decided to centralise all of its ADF law of armed conflict training and military justice training as well. And the responsibility for that training now sits with our Director General Military Legal Services, but he's supported by the Military Law Centre, the MLC. And what they did was they went and looked at and issued job task profiles for everyone. So they looked at, what an initial recruit, so someone up to 2 years in the 3 services, and then an operator, so 2 to 5 years of military service, and then a staff officer over 5 years of service, and a commander. And so the various services and groups are designing their own training packages, but around those job profiles, so we have some consistency. And what's important about those job profiles is to understand the various roles that individuals play in an armed conflict, because it really recognises that Loac training has to be tailored to the audience that it's being given to. A pilot needs to know different things compared to an infantry rifleman or a dog handler, for instance. So that's really important. So we can't give the same very generic Loac brief to a recruit or a rifleman as we would to give to a commander, because they simply have different roles on the battlefield. The commander in particular not only needs to understand the law of armed conflict, but they need to make sure the people under their command have the appropriate training. They need to be vigilant to ensure that people are complying with the law of armed conflict, and they have to investigate and report any potential breaches. And they also have that role in holding individuals accountable if there is a breach as well. So we're working through that, and the priority for the Military Law Centre is to review all of the training that the ADF provides on Loac, and look at all the management practices across all of the services and different groups, and to make sure that they do comply with those job profiles and there's some consistency. And really importantly, the MLC is going to look at ensuring that there's a performance review mechanism for reporting on the health and effectiveness of that training. I think it's really important to check, do that quality assurance and make sure that things are going well.
Absolutely. Tennille, apart from training ADF legal officers and delivering ADF-wide Loac training, does the MLC provide any face-to-face training?
Yes, they absolutely do. So the MLC delivers Loac training to general service officers on their tiered training courses. And that includes the Australian Command and Staff College, which I had the joy of and pleasure of attending last year. So we certainly got some really good training on that. Where they also do training on all of our pre-command courses and also our advanced inquiry officer course as well.
Outstanding. Tennille, I want to just focus a little bit on the type of training and how it's delivered. And I'm wondering if you could provide some insight into the MLC and what do you think is the best way of providing Loac training in terms of concepts covered? For example, do you think that a comprehensive approach is more or less effective than a selection of core norms which can be instilled in that training?
I think both models can be used effectively to pass information about Loac. In terms of a formal training, a comprehensive approach is really well utilised to ensure that there's a tailored, systematic and prioritised approach to what's required. And that tailoring is really important, as I mentioned earlier on. Whereas a less formal approach where you look at a selection of core norms is really useful to install a culture of compliance, because if the organisation respects compliance, then we're more likely to see it.
Yeah, and I think that issue of culture and culture of compliance is in my view at least, critical.
Absolutely.
What do you think is the best mode of delivery? Is it classroom instruction or training on exercises, or perhaps a combination of both?
I think the combination of both is, I think the training continuum needs to have both. You need to have a formal mechanism and informal. So you need to have those formal assessments for, from recruits to operators to staff officers and commanders, just to do that check that they are familiar with the concepts. But I think it's really important that they can also apply that practically in the battle space, because that's what we're after at the end of the day. And that's why I think practical scenario-based training is incredibly important to make sure the concepts are understood. And when you work through those scenarios and you see the soldiers, sailors and aviators understanding it and discussing it, that's really important. And that's when they get a lot of the learning out of.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, Tennille, is the training undertaken by the MLC or ADF differentiated by ranks, by types of units, etc.? And in that regard, what are the obstacles, do you think, there are to understanding Loac and adherence to Loac? Again, if there are any, is that differentiated by ranks or units or roles? And how might this be addressed? I know there's a lot of questions in there, but if you could unravel
I'll give it my best shot.
Thank you.
So we do conduct common training for all ADF members. So you get initial training in your initial recruit course, and we also get the training on career courses as well. We then also get specific training on exercises and also obviously more specialised training that is relevant to a particular deployment or operation as well. And that's tailored to the operational needs of that. The difficulty with any form of legal training, whether it's Loac or admin or discipline, is making sure it's interesting and relevant to the audience. So again, I go back to my point about it needs to be tailored to the audience. Case studies and scenario-based training are a great way I've found to engage soldiers. I will mention soldiers, obviously sailors and aviators are equally important. I just have more experience teaching soldiers. But it allows them to explore different concepts. And really importantly for an instructor, it gives you immediate feedback on whether you've actually been successful in communicating those legal principles. If they're all over the shop, you're like, okay, I need to rethink how I'm delivering that. And that's one of the reasons why we put so much emphasis on training our legal officers, to make sure that they can are good trainers, not just that they know their subjects, but they can train.
Yeah, of course. Good point. Look, I just end up with a more of a strategic question at the end. And I'd be very interested in what your thoughts are on the potential and pitfalls of state reporting on military Loac training.
So, Dale, overall, I genuinely believe the overwhelming majority of professional sailors and aviators want to comply with Loac. In my experience, soldiers genuinely want to know what the law is, and they want to know what they can and can't do. Particularly those I find in positions of command, and also the planners. Unfortunately, there are some individuals who do not comply, and they should be brought to justice. And a comprehensive training, reporting and military justice system is vital to enforcing compliance. And that also ensures a quicker end to hostilities, a more efficient and effective use of the military justice process, and also a more constructive, hopefully, reconciliation, which hopefully leads to a longer lasting peace. There's no doubt that there are some real challenges here for states that don't have a robust training, reporting or military justice system. And I think training is a vital element in ensuring their overall Loac compliance and reporting, evaluation and monitoring of Loac. And I think monitoring that by external agencies may be a useful way for states to ensure Loac compliance. However, there is a difficulty with that approach, is that, the resourcing of an inspection, evaluation,